Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. Yes, good, thanks. We have a long hour and a half. We have a lot to get through and some very exciting presentations, but also pledges towards the end. So I'm not going to spend too much time on my opening, but just to let you know, so my name is Dr. Jamie Munn. I'm the Executive Director for the International Council of Voluntary Agencies, ICFA, based here in Geneva, but we have offices in different regional locations. And together with our partners at UNHCR, we're very pleased to co-convene this session today, but also the pledge, which, as you can see, is really focused on advancing localization and displacement situations, but also statelessness and the response thereof. So really looking at locally led action and what are our pledges as we move forward. And you would have heard that so much this week, and I'm very pleased to see the emphasis being placed on local and national actors, refugee-led, and also women-led refugee organizations. I think this is as we've heard already this week, I will repeat one thing, and that is we've grown a lot in the last 4 years, and we look forward to the next 4 years and see where we are. So with that, this pledge is really around partnerships. Today we're really looking at how are we going to get to a position where we're talking about equitable partnerships, and primarily those partnerships with local and national actors. Be it with a UN agency, INGOs, or national actors to national actors, equity within the partnerships has been a struggle. And I think that what we're trying to do is shine a light on that, not shy it away from the realities, and really try to address where equity within relationships in the humanitarian response come into play. When we talk about local actors and local NGOs, we mustn't forget that we're also looking at the faith-based organizations. We're looking at the Red Cross, Red Crescent national societies. And so it's all encompassing. We're not just focusing on an NGO. Civil society is much deeper than that. It's both organized, as we know, and fluid associations, grassroots organizations. So when we have the discussions around the pledges later on this afternoon, we'll hear a little bit more about that as we listen to our colleagues. So it's my pleasure to moderate this discussion. Today we have 3 distinguished guests that will give us a keynote address. And after that, I will invite them to step away from the podium and for our panelists to join us after that. Is that okay? Everybody's here? Yes. Good, great. Okay, so our first speaker is Kelly Clements, who is the Deputy High Commissioner at UNHCR.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jamie, and greetings to everybody. I have to say, I was just telling the German ambassador, at this stage in the forum, one gets a little bit giddy. There's been a buzz for the last 2.5 days, but having walked from one building over to the other just in the last few minutes, I think the buzz has increased in intensity. So if you feel that a little bit from the podium, that explains why. It's been a fantastic forum, and I think this is probably one of the best topics to close this afternoon. I think we only have a couple more segments before the closing. So this is perfect. I also want to take you back, if I could, even further than where Jamie did, to maybe one of my most important moments in my first year as Deputy High Commissioner, which was the World Humanitarian Summit in Istanbul. Some of you were there, I'm sure, in 2016. It was a remarkable moment for us to focus on a number of issues to try to mobilize and deliver differently, and to ensure that we were listening to voices everywhere. And one of those important topics, of course, was how do we partner, as Jamie said, how do we partner with those that are closest or involved themselves in delivery? In our case, in UNHCR's case, it's protection, aid, and solutions. And that, what has now become, the buzzword localization, and I know we're going to be talking about this afternoon what does that really mean and how are we going to promote it, that agenda has really taken off. And the grand bargain, I think, was probably the clearest framework for that engagement. Many of us at that point did a little pre-forum pledges, commitments in terms of what we undertook to do as organizations and why it was important. And in the case of UNHCR, we have taken this exceptionally seriously. So I go back several years, but I do, while we have a lot left to do, I think we shouldn't lose sight that we are making some progress. And this, I think, we have seen over the last 2.5 days in abundance. But a couple of things to add. Obviously, in terms of the progress, and let me just give you a couple of stats from the UN Refugee Agency's point of view. For us, we see it in the numbers, in the percentages of expenditures and with whom we are partnering in terms of those expenditures. Expenditures and then the number of partners. I think you all know that we have over 1,000 partners around the globe in 550 different locations, and we couldn't do it without them, without you. Many of you are in the room. In 2021, 54% of our partners were local or national. In 2022, the percentage was 84. So this message, certainly in our operations, that this really matters in terms of how we deliver and how we deliver differently is really resonating. And we can talk a little bit about, how did we do that, but I won't do that at this particular moment. It also, the commitment is reflected in terms of how we allocate our resources, getting to the expenditure piece. 57% of our total funding provided to partners went to local and national organizations, and that is up from 53% in 2021. So again, steady progress upwards, which is a good thing, getting resources closer to the point of delivery. We have made a significant investment in partnerships with refugee-led organizations, women-led organizations, stateless-led organizations, and that for us is the clearest tool and the mechanism that we have put into place, which some of you I think are direct recipients of, is the Refugee-Led Organization Innovation Fund. And I have to say the kind of support and engagement and what we've heard from partners about how they want to have more of that kind of incubator in terms of being able to provide and support and help to knowledge transfer, all of that is important. But it goes beyond money and it goes beyond the number of actors. And we've talked a lot in the last 2.5 days in these halls about the engagement and the involvement of these actors in decision making. And that's where it really matters. And that's where we're trying to make further steps. We established, I think, there may be a few members in the room with us. We established a global advisory board with 16 organizations led by displaced and stateless persons. What does this board do? It helps us develop policies and tools. So for example, the High Commissioner is just about to sign a policy on child protection, which had engagement of that global advisory board in terms of the content. It helps us advise on strategies. Another strategy that is forthcoming is one on livelihoods. Helps to advise us on the kind of communication we're doing, changing our language, changing the way that we situate ourselves in terms of delivery. That is something that the board helps us do. And then we have also strongly worked with refugee-led organizations for this particular forum on a refugee statement, which of course some of you are involved with in terms of meaningful refugee participation, with 100 refugee experts in more than 100 refugee-led organizations. So a lot of progress, and it's thanks to you. And I have to say, terrific partnership with ICFA. And I think this kind of pledge that we're talking about now is an attempt to go even further in terms of some of the barriers so we can do even better. And I think some of the targeted efforts related to funding, knowledge transfer, inclusion of local actions and actors in decision-making, all of this will help. And the goal, of course, is equal partnerships, trying to break down what has been, I think, a siloed approach And it is something that we have between these 4-year increments that we have between forums that we build on in the senior officials meeting that happens 2 years from now, in our global NGO consultations that happens every 2 years, our regional consultations that also happens every 2 years on off cycles. We have the momentum to be able to continue the feedback, and that feedback going both ways, which is of course very important. So the bottom line, obviously this pledge paves the way for taking our localization efforts further. We need to put more means in the hands of people, including, of course, refugees, displaced, stateless people, and the communities that host them. And we need to improve the effectiveness and the efficiency of humanitarian action, along with development and peace. So this is absolutely central to our efforts, and we are so pleased to be here with you today to go through what it means to people. So thank you, Jamie. I'm sorry I'm going to dash even earlier, but I really appreciate being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks. I think what we've just heard is some very good examples of that progress that's being made, and thanks very much for sharing it with us. And the partnership with UNHCR, I think, for all NGOs is very valuable, and we see that change happening. So thank you, and I'm sure the refugees and stateless people see it as well. So, good luck with your next session. So as I said from the very beginning, so the multi-stakeholder pledge that we're talking about today, and that we'll hear more about from the rest of our panelists, couldn't be made possible with just NGOs and UN agencies, but we really rely on the equal partnerships that we have with our member states and governments. So our next two speakers, I have really a strong privilege to introduce to you Her Honourable Victoria Busingye, close enough?
Yes.
Who is the State Minister for Local Government in Uganda, who will now speak to us about the experiences of localization within Ugandan context. And we're very pleased to have you.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to represent the government of Uganda who have come to the Global Refugee Forum and this localization side event with an overall CRF theme to the world that Uganda, the world's model for refugee response, let's make it sustainable. Uganda speaks from her heart with significant and realistic examples of what is happening on ground. Some you've heard since you came, but the struggle continues. In particular, our GRF sub-theme for localization is localizing the refugee response, strengthening the role and impact of national responders. Our rationale for localization: there are good reasons for localization agenda for which we are advocating for as a country. Localization has numerous advantages: faster and more flexible. It's timeless. The international organizations in the refugee response in Uganda, looking at the district local governments as the first responders to receive refugees, they are ready to sacrifice and share the little resources with refugees before other actors come in. When the great influx of 2016 happened, it was the local and national responders that acted first. International organizations joined later. When we look at the networks and knowledge, that is open access, the local language is an advantage. Ability to appropriate all the activities in a timely manner, which saves time. Our local expertise makes sure that interventions are adequate and tailored to those they intend to reach. Being part of the same community makes peaceful coexistence. I'm summarizing in the interest of time, so when you follow the text, you will see that I'm leaving some issues out. This localization is more cost-effective. The method is more cost-effective, As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, the local responders can operate more coefficiently than international organizations. Fewer sub-granting arrangements between donors and organizations further improve cost effectiveness. We have knowledgeable people on ground, coupled with the NGOs around, backed up by the technocrats. The work can be done timely and efficiently with utmost transparency as Uganda fights corruption to the dot. Sustainability of interventions. This is very, very important. Uganda's refugee response provides a unique foundation to achieve the goals of the Grand Bargain and translate the Forum of Localized Humanitarian and Development Action from policy to practice. Strengthening national and local responders has been identified as one of the 5 thematic priorities of Uganda's convention. Since the rollout of CRRF, Uganda has undertaken important steps to enhancing the role of local and national actors. Let me highlight 3 core components. The local NGOs. Coordination of local NGOs and representation of CRRF steering group has been undertaken. The humanitarian actors have also been part of the GRF preparation. We have a clear set of recommendations and actions that need to be taken in order to change course. They are directed to us as government, to donors and international partners, and the local NGOs. I want to confirm that the role of government of Uganda and district local governments stand firm, and consistency and transparency are our greatest values. As Minister of Local Government, of course, localization is an area that is close to my heart. Personally, I'm from a district that receives refugees. We may not be the ones that permanently host refugees, but we are the first ones to welcome refugees. I'll now switch to our commitment as the government of Uganda. This is our pledge. The government of Uganda pledges to include localization provisions in strategies and frameworks for the refugees' response to strengthen the role of national and local responders and gradually achieve the Grand Bargain commitment by 2027. Currently, 3% of donor funds is what we get. We request it to improve to at least 25% because we trust the knowledge, expertise backed up by our technocrats. We will utilize it to the dot with value for money as a must, and we achieve our strategies and set objectives. We appeal that there be relaxation of the policy for more funds, and more so to local governments and local responders to ease the activities. More means in the hands of people, especially the refugees, for God and my country.
Thank you, Your Excellency. That was very direct, and I appreciate it so much that the last call is, when we talk about local and national government, we often think about central and forget the district and local level, and it's very kind to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think that's very clear. So we thank you for that opening remark. Yes, and you were on time perfectly. Before we move on to our next speaker, I just want to remind ourselves that the creation of this multi-stakeholder pledge took a lot of work and dedication across so many different actors. So it started off with a smaller group and then grew to 20 members of a reference group, followed by 3 different working groups of 10 actors each, all across different governments, UN agencies, NGOs, and the multiplicity of NGOs, as we know, we're an ecosystem amongst ourselves. So I really want to make sure that we acknowledge all of the work that's gone into the creation of this multi-stakeholder pledge. We will give space in a moment, yes, for sure. So within that in mind, we're going to turn our attention to Natalie, who I know from many years ago now, it seems. That was around the World Humanitarian Summit, which 8 years is a long time. So from the Netherlands, we have the director, I always want to get your title exactly right this time, of Stability and Humanitarian Aid in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So I will turn over to you, and I look forward to hearing on the promises around the commitments of the pledge and the presentation thereof. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jamie, and it's great to reacquaint every time and again. And I guess that's something that is true of all of us. I hope you still have some energy left on this Friday afternoon. Are you still okay here? Yeah? Oh, cool. Very cool. Because indeed, it's a lot of talking and listening and meeting each other, you know, in the hallways and. But there's indeed a buzz, as Kelly said, and a very positive buzz. And it was great, Jamie, how you just mentioned how the pledge came about and how much effort has gone in, how much energy has gone in from all different sides. Because I think, you know, look around you. I mean, I'm looking into this room and I see all these different faces. Isn't it incredible? I mean, all these people have a role in actually supporting refugees and in opening their homes, as you said. But also like from the donor perspective, because I'm sitting here from like the donor perspective. I don't like the word donor. I'm going with Switzerland, funding partner. But indeed, we have all these different perspectives. We have different places in the world, but we have to do this together. And I think the beauty of this Global Refugee Forum is that we are here together and that we talk together and that we explain each other's position and each other's ecosystem. So just briefly, I want to thank you so much through you, everybody in Uganda, and through you and Uganda, every host country and every host community, because I think we never thank you enough. And I've been there before COVID, and I've seen it with my own eyes. I felt it. You know, you open your homes, refugees are welcome. And I was there when there was some kind of a fear for upcoming Ebola, maybe crisis from DRC. And I saw how people were preparing and how they had everything ready and they were not closing the borders. And I was coming from, you know, I was coming from Geneva at that time and I'm like, you know, I'm so safe. You know, I'm so secure, I'm so safe. What would I do if somebody with Ebola would maybe enter my home, you know, because that's scary. And you were just so well prepared. And then actually we had never heard of COVID and then COVID came. I think it wasn't the Ebola, but it was the COVID. I mean, I was back in Geneva and I was thinking, what would now happen in Uganda? What would now happen in the place that I visited? And I thought they're very well prepared. Because if they're prepared for Ebola, they're prepared for COVID. I was so sure, and you did so well. So thank you so much for that, and through you, really thank you for all the host communities. And I think COVID also showed us that it can be done. You know, after 2 years of COVID, nobody could tell me anymore that you can't work locally. It's just, it's not an argument, right? Because we did it. I mean, we sent money, we wired it, we gave advice. We didn't leave you out there. We were still there in this whole ecosystem together to help each other and find each other. But we did it in a different way and it was possible. So I think we should really take lessons from that period in which we found ways to work together and also find and fund each other. And I think this pledge really is a true testimony to that. So I just want to highlight 2 components that we as a donor like very much, because now I'm very much off script. Sorry for that. That's because it's Friday afternoon. Okay, so this pledge, which indeed took a lot of time and very grateful for all of you who worked on it. But there are 2 specific components that we like very much as the Netherlands. You can sign up to the separate components so you can sign up to whatever you think is relevant and that you like, which is great because all of us are diverse and we come from different places and we have different wishes, but we also have different systems in which we have to be accountable. And so this is really great that it's not an all or nothing, but that it has these different components. For us, one of the key components is the overarching policy component, because actually there we commit to support all actors collectively in advancing locally led action. So we really see a place for all actors, but maybe in a different way, in a different role than how we did it before. Like I was saying, you know, COVID showed us different ways. So we think the international actors, the in-between layer, so to speak, and the local actors, they should all work together and they all have a place in this system. But maybe we want to pass on as much as of the cake as we can to the local. So like when I'm baking a cake in The Hague, I want you to have almost all of it, but I can't send it to you straight because, you know, you need to have like policies and accountability, because I'm also accountable to my parliament again. You know, it's not like I have this money and it's easy money. No, I have to fight for it all the time in parliament because parliament says, oh, we need another road in the Netherlands. And I say, no, we need to actually support refugees. So you need these layers. So I think that is very important to us. Localization really is at the heart of our policies. We have tenders specifically made for this, but where we give everybody a place. And then the second component, because I will close, the second component of the pledge that we really like is the cross-cutting component, which really calls for transformative change and a real big change in power dynamics. And I think we have to be honest with each other and have that discussion, because sometimes we say it and it's nice words, but we don't really do it. And you have to hold us accountable for it. So you have to tell us when we are like in a position that you say, now listen, you Dutch person from the Netherlands, this is not the way it goes in Uganda. I think that is a professional and a good discussion to have. And that's also something that we like a lot about this pledge. So we're in. And now I hope all of you are in as well, which are my final remarks.
Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you, guys. Okay, great. So please focus on the question answers through Pigeonhole. If we don't get to that session, we are going to still capture those questions and we will find a way of feeding them into at least our report coming out of both this session, but also as a response to the multi-stakeholder pledge. So I'm very happy to have so many distinguished guests that are truly representative of that ecosystem at the table with us now. As we have changed our seating a little bit, I can't read my script, which says to my left is, because you're not supposed to be here, but it's okay. No, it's fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let everyone speak one at a time. We have very short interventions. So those of you that are thinking about the questions, please keep in mind what each person says and take advantage of that opportunity as we go forward. So actually, at the moment, we will go in the reverse direction. So I'm going to turn to Susana, who is with Caritas Venezuela. And we're going to hear a little bit about decision-making commitments and the announcement of the Caritas Network Pledge.
Está en español.
Sorry, for those of you that would want translation, it should be in front of you. So English is 1, French is 2, and Spanish is 3. Thank you.
Yes. Buenas tardes, distinguidos participantes, colegas. Les hablo en nombre de Caritas Venezuela. Nuestro trabajo pastoral comenzó en 1963 y fue oficializado por la Conferencia Episcopal Venezolana en 1997, siendo reconocida ahora como la organización humanitaria más extensa del país miembro además de la Confederación Cáritas en todo el mundo. Apreciamos esta oportunidad de compartir nuestras experiencias como organización local en los mecanismos de toma de decisión y en los espacios humanitarios de trabajo. Son muchas, pero quisiéramos resaltar varias de estas experiencias. Primero, la de haber articulado la primera plataforma de organizaciones nacionales en la acción humanitaria de Venezuela, PANAL. Con esta plataforma hemos ganado representación en los mecanismos de coordinación y ha sido más fácil monitorear el cumplimiento de los principios de localización en el país. Asimismo, hemos participado como agencia local co-líder en los clústeres del mecanismo de OCHA en Venezuela, ganando desde allí influencia en la definición de marcos de trabajo y en la movilización de recursos. Similarmente, hemos alcanzado un asiento en la Junta Asesora del Pool Fund de Venezuela, del Fondo Mancomunado para Emergencias, convocado y manejado por OCHA. Participar allí en la toma de decisiones en ese mecanismo ha sido clave para que se incrementara la proporción de ese fondo que ahora es asignado para la implementación por agentes locales. Por último, hemos participado también en iniciativas globales de solidaridad con la crisis de Venezuela y en las mesas de negociación política que han tenido un capítulo humanitario. Esos espacios hasta ahora habían sido ocupados en nuestro nombre por agencias internacionales. Muy valiosas han sido también las experiencias de localización a lo interno de nuestra propia confederación. Hemos avanzado mucho en propiciar la participación y la autonomía de las cáritas parroquiales y diocesanas en los mecanismos de coordinación humanitaria. Hemos ganado participación en grupos de trabajo local sobre localización, siendo el más relevante la Task Force 5 del IASC, un espacio al que tuvimos acceso gracias al aval de Cáritas Internacional. Finalmente, hemos participado en grupos regionales frente a contextos de desplazamiento y apatridia. Quizás el mejor testimonio, porque es el mío, es el grupo de trabajo interfronterizo que ha apoyado Cáritas Internacional para coordinar la respuesta de varias cáritas locales a la crisis de refugiados y migrantes de Venezuela en América Latina. En este espacio, no solo nuestras voces han contado como países de acogida o como el país de origen, sino que las mismas cáritas de Europa en ese grupo se han abierto para que retroalimentáramos sus respuestas. Este no es el único testimonio, tenemos testimonios de Cáritas Uganda, de Cáritas Bangladesh presentes en la sala, incluyendo al representante del grupo de trabajo de localización que está al frente de ese tema en Bangladesh en los últimos 5 años. Ya para terminar, con todas estas experiencias, lo que queremos es enfatizar que confirmamos nuestros principios como Cáritas de cooperación fraterna, autonomía y partenariado, enraizados en lo más fundacional de Cáritas, incluso antes del Gran Pacto. No ha sido fácil, solo les presenté las experiencias positivas, pero estas han sido el resultado de un proceso de reivindicaciones y de protección de lo local dentro de nuestros espacios humanitarios de trabajo, en una respuesta en Venezuela que comenzó siendo local al principio y luego se complejizó con la llegada de la cooperación internacional. La Confederación Cáritas se adhiere al Multi-Stakeholder Pledge en sus varios componentes y sobre este componente de participación en la toma de decisiones estamos comprometidos con impulsar la participación segura, relevante y equitativa de las cáritas locales y nacionales en las respuestas a refugiados, impulsando sus capacidades, acompañándolas en superar los obstáculos de acceso y creando un espacio propicio para su participación. Agradecemos la disposición de nuestros socios para hacer posible estos avances y convocamos a que más organizaciones y donantes se adhieran a este compromiso por una acción humanitaria liderada localmente frente a la situación de refugiados, desplazados y personas en situación de apatridia. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. There's so much food for thought within that one presentation. We could take up the rest of our time, but we won't. I thank you very much. It's a lot of positive issues there. We're going to turn over from Venezuela to Turkey, where we have Noor from Sanid. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's a big privilege for me to be here and engage in this meaningful discussion. I am Nur İnce Tahtacı, coming from Turkey. I'm representing Senate organization. We are a refugee-led organization based in Gaziantep. We are working with and for disabled refugees since 10 years locally in the region. And here today, I want to share insights about being part of decision-making process and its impact on the community for locally led action and intervention. So to start this, I have to talk about Turkish Refugee Council, that we are member of it. We are like 22 refugee-led organizations in this Turkish Refugee Council, TRC. And with TRC, we had shared a lot of joint events, and therefore we could name our problems in funds, and we have funds and capacity building and everything, and then we could name it and locate it in the localization context. After that, we have decided to be part of this table who are trying to do something about localization. And we have launched National Reference Group last year on January, which is a very big step in order to set up the Grand Bargain localization in aid agenda. We are in 2 years, it's going to be 10th anniversary of Grand Bargain, and it's very important to take further steps. And it's our pride to set up this in Turkey with local actors and with refugee-led organizations. And in this table, let's say steering committee, we have UN agencies, donors, and refugee-led organizations and national organizations, where we are sharing our experiences and discussing the issues internally, and we are encouraging them a little bit, I must say, pushing steering committee in order to keep on talking about localization and internalize it, to hear us, to feel it, and like let's say to internalize and to take action, to keep on taking action. And therefore, while we are representing refugee-led organizations, we can talk about our experiences in fundraising, in decision-making and capacity sharing. Otherwise, this will be invisible. Whatever we are doing on the field, as we are first responders every time, it will be invisible. So in this steering committee, where there aren't any power relations, we are all equal, and there's open dialogue, which is very important. We can keep on setting up the agenda, and I hope we will have more further success stories for localization. And localization matters not only for the humanitarian aid, but for the identity, for protection of the NGOs and which are representing the communities. So that's why I want to say here again our commitment about localization, and thank you for your patience and time and inviting us and having us here today.
Thank you very much. Again, I'm enthusiastic we're talking to the Deputy High Commissioner of UNHCR, we're talking to refugee-led organizations and all of the rest of us in the room. It's inspiring. So from Turkey, thank you, we're going to turn ourselves to Bangladesh, and we're going to move over to Brack and Morsad, please.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'll start with, I don't know, we are new in the humanitarian world. Let me start with BRAC. We start in 1972 as a humanitarian organization to settle the Bangladeshi refugee who had to take refuge during the War of Liberation in India. But from that point on, we gradually turned with Bangladesh, graduated with Bangladesh, and became an out-and-out development organization. But in 2017, when this refugee crisis started in Cox's Bazar, thanks to UNHCR, Australia, UK, and all the encouragement, we started into the humanitarian action. and now we are the largest in Cox's Bazar in terms of response. We have also started our operation in Uganda, a humanitarian operation in Uganda. We are there in Uganda for a long time, and in Afghanistan. And so we are gradually learning the trick. But I think this is the reason why when we started talking about localization, it was so old topic for us, because in development we're doing localization all the time. So let me first start with the pledges, and then I'll explain one experience of ours. So our pledge is, as part of the pledge, we as a community and a sector are committing to enhancing collaboration and coordination among local and national actors through true and thoughtful inclusion, including regular interaction and communication. We will also engage in true collaboration, learning and empowerment among humanitarian actors, but also with development, peace sectors, sharing capacity, promoting inclusivity, and enhancing local resilience, particularly empowering local and national actors towards self-sufficiency and full NGO status through technical and financial support for legal registration. And finally, we will raise awareness among successful, inclusive, locally led knowledge sharing initiative and establish a framework for monitoring success, building an evidence-based and leading coordinated and open effort to scale methods that have been successful. That's our pledge. Now, what does it really mean? You might have noticed we have used truly word twice, thrice in this pledge, that why we are so emphasizing on truly. Localization can be bad and good. Localization can be just at touching base, or can be really deep. What we are doing in Bangladesh, and thanks to Global Affairs Canada and DFAT Australia, they are part of this core design. Is almost a learning experience with us. What we have found out that the localization, the key problem of localization with the Netherlands intervention touched about, is this catch-22. When you ask the donor, they are not willing to give money to a local or small NGO because they don't have capacity. But if you ask them, they said, how can we have capacity if we don't have money? So to do this, we now have a arrangement we call Localization Pool Fund in Bangladesh, where BRAC is working as the risk sink. We are taking the risk from the donor. BRAC, as an organization working for 50 years with all the donors as a trusted partner, we are in a position to take the risk, but we are working with the smaller NGOs, local and national NGOs, helping them build their individual, organizational, and ecosystem capacity, not just capacity of their staff, because if we do that, they will find a better job in a bigger organization and leave. That's not what we're doing. We're really working with the organization, improving their capacity, building their systems, their safeguarding system, their procurement system, their HR system, so that soon enough, they all become sufficiently capable to seek direct funding. We started with 4 NGOs. 1 year has passed. All 4 of them has received independent funding after they joined them. We are also covered around 80 NGOs in their individual training, and 38% of them already started getting funding directly. And we are hoping, and then now we are working with another 25. So after the project ends in another 1.5 years, we are sure that we'll have at least 20 local national NGO who are not getting direct funding because of so-called capacity issues, will have some funding from donors other than this pool fund. So then we will have an ecosystem where nobody can just shy away from localization, but just saying that, okay, they are good, but they don't have the capacity. Thank you.
Morshid, thank you very much. I think that's that is proof that national actors can help local actors, and you don't need the rest of us. So thanks very much. And we're going to get on our airplane and leave Bangladesh and go back to Turkey, but this time to speak with the Turkish Red Cross. So Alper, over to you, please.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm twice honored today. I'm both representing the Turkish Red Crescent, the National Society of Turkey, the largest refugee host in the world for long, and also representing the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent and its member national societies, the largest humanitarian community-based network around the world. So I belong to a family that has the localization at its core in its original design. So IFRC, our federation, is also the co-convener of the Grand Bargain Localization Workstream, and its member national societies are on the front lines of every emergency, driving forward locally led humanitarian action at scale around the world. And localization is not just about conducting activities at local level, it's about cultivating the ownership and learning at global, national, and local levels. And to foster this ownership and learning, I want to address a couple of critical points to be adopted. First and foremost, we believe it's imperative to recognize that the capacity sharing is a two-way street. We tend to think that capacity sharing comes from global level to local, but it's not the case. Local actors have tremendous knowledge to share, and it's often overlooked or undervalued. Second is an environment that is conducive and an environment that must be fostered to share. Turkish Red Crescent, for example, established advisory committees in the community centers that we serve to refugees, advisory committees that we listen and design our operations accordingly. This way of working transformed how we work and brought community voices and perspective into our programs. Furthermore, sustaining this environment is grounded in trust, and building trust, we believe, takes time. Turkish Red Crescent is implementing the world's largest cash program for over 6 years now, and in this partnership with IFRC, we maintain cooperation with local, national, and international actors. We build trust and enabling all of society approach. By focusing on the local context and tailoring the assistance to the needs and cultural nuances, investing in this over time, a sustainable partnership has been established. And my last point is about regeneration of knowledge. The earthquakes that we faced in my country in February this year showed us the significance and impact of long-term investment in capacities. Our extensive cash and community-based approach paved the way for a rapid response in this emergency. We strategically positioned ourselves to co-chair the UN Interagency Cash Coordination, but also as the cash convener, the national actor, we convened the IFRC, INGOs, and UN under one single cash program that addressed the needs of earthquake-affected populations. I think this is a great example of showing the powerful impact of supporting national actors. Learning and sharing is a continuous process, and we all have a role to play in this. So, consequently, the IFRC network is making a pledge to continue to champion the localization agenda, highlighting the critical role of locally led organizations that support refugees and other displaced people, such as by promoting the leadership and institutional capacity of national societies with their auxiliary role and unique humanitarian mandate. This pledge demonstrates our strong commitment to our cause. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you mentioned the most important word I think that we can always use, and that's trust amongst the partners. And the trust is necessary for the points that you're mentioning around the national societies' capacity sharing and the way in which the IFRC and the different national societies around the world are working in collective ways to achieve that. And thank you very much for that. We're going to turn to Oxfam International, and Fatih is on my left. Yes, there you are. Great to see you.
Merci beaucoup. Je vais parler en français. Mesdames, Messieurs, chers délégués, chers amis, c'est un plaisir, c'est un honneur pour moi de m'adresser à vous sur ce sujet crucial. Oxfam travaille depuis de nombreuses années à la promotion de la localisation et sur le leadership humanitaire local également. Et nous sommes heureux de constater que le Forum mondial sur les réfugiés de cette année accorde à ces sujets une place de choix. Tout d'abord, je voudrais brièvement présenter les éléments relatifs au financement des acteurs locaux énoncés dans les 4 domaines de l'engagement multipartite sur la promotion de la localisation. Le premier est l'accessibilité et l'engagement à ce que le financement soit accessible aux acteurs locaux et nationaux, y compris les organisations et les groupes dirigés par les réfugiés. Nous savons que trop souvent, les acteurs locaux ont un accès limité aux bailleurs de fonds et aux opportunités de financement. En veillant à ouvrir et à démocratiser les espaces où les décisions de financement sont prises, nous pouvons créer une distribution plus efficace des ressources. Deuxièmement, l'engagement vise à garantir une meilleure qualité de financement, par exemple en augmentant le financement de base et en allégeant les processus de conformité. Ces points sont souvent soulignés comme étant une priorité essentielle lorsqu'il s'agit de transférer le financement au niveau local. Le troisième élément est axé sur le montant du financement et nous voyons ici se refléter l'un des engagements centraux du Grand Bargain, l'octroi de 25% du financement humanitaire aux acteurs locaux et nationaux. Et nous en sommes loin. L'année dernière, seul 1,2% du total des fonds humanitaires sont parvenus directement aux acteurs locaux et nationaux. Enfin, il s'agit d'un suivi plus solide et plus transparent des financements accordés aux acteurs locaux, y compris aux organisations dirigées par des réfugiés. Un suivi de qualité est essentiel. Sans cela, nous ne saurons pas où nous progressons et où nous prenons du retard. Nous avons soumis notre propre engagement dans le cadre de la promotion de la localisation dans les réponses au déplacement et à l'apatridie. Notre engagement est aligné sur nos engagements actuels, en particulier ceux que nous avons pris dans le cadre du Grand Bargain et de la Charte pour le changement, deux chartes qui révèlent nos efforts pour transférer le pouvoir, la prise de décision et le financement aux acteurs locaux. Nous nous appuierons sur ces engagements existants pour les adapter aux réponses apportées aux réfugiés. Nous visons à renforcer les partenariats de collaboration avec les organisations dirigées par des réfugiés et des apatrides, à soutenir et à investir dans des mécanismes de financement innovants et à contribuer à lever les obstacles qui peuvent entraver une participation significative et équitable. Notre vision est celle d'un système humanitaire plus collaboratif, plus inclusif, plus flexible et plus diversifié qu'il ne l'a été jusqu'à présent. En un mot, un système plus responsable vis-à-vis de ceux et celles qu'il entend soutenir. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup aussi. I think there's a lot there as well on the financing commitments that we're all making, and I appreciate Oxfam's leadership. It's also rewarding. With that, we're going to continue. So Cecile is with us from Women in Action, or For Action, apologies. And here we're going to hear a little bit more about the funding commitment, but focused on the practice on funding.
Merci beaucoup pour la parole. Je commence par remercier le ACR de nous avoir invités à ce grand événement pour représenter et parler au nom de toutes les organisations dirigées par les réfugiés. Et j'aimerais mettre un accent particulier sur les organisations dirigées par les femmes réfugiées pour avoir initié un network qui s'appelle African Refugee Women-Led Network. Parlant de la localisation dans la réponse aux déplacés, aux réfugiés et à l'apatride, permettez-moi de partager une expérience qui a apporté un impact tangible et inspirant résultant du Fonds d'innovation du Haut Commissariat pour le réfugié dirigé par les réfugiés. Ces fonds octroyant des financements directs aux initiatives innovantes de réfugiés a exercé une influence transformative, notamment pour Women for Action au Malawi et dans le camp de réfugiés. Women for Action, depuis 2020, s'est dévouée à apporter des solutions aux problèmes de la communauté de réfugiés, tout en se focalisant sur le renforcement des capacités économiques des femmes et des filles vulnérables. Nos efforts personnels, avec des miettes provenant de nos contributions mensuelles de femmes et de filles réfugiées, n'ont pas permis d'atteindre des résultats importants ni d'obtenir des solutions significatives. Mais avec des fonds de services d'innovation du HCR octroyés en 2023, Women for Action a pu répondre avec encore plus de précision aux besoins de la communauté des réfugiés en instaurant une solution novatrice basée sur l'aquaponie. Celle-ci n'a pas seulement créé une activité génératrice de revenus pour les femmes, mais a également renforcé la sécurité alimentaire au sein du camp de Nzaleka et intégré les femmes et les filles réfugiées dans le monde digital par l'utilisation de l'outil informatique. Ces fonds ont été cruciaux pour renforcer la pérennité de notre organisation, ouvrant ainsi la voie à l'expansion de nos activités. Ceci a également contribué à une meilleure intégration de réfugiés au sein de la communauté. Pourquoi ai-je commencé avec cette expérience-là? C'est parce que la réussite de cette initiative atteste que les organisations dirigées par des réfugiés sont dignes de confiance pour mettre en œuvre des projets efficaces et pertinents à raison de leur lien étroit avec les bénéficiaires et leur compréhension approfondie de leurs besoins. En fin de compte, les fonds d'innovation dirigés par les réfugiés ont démontré que les réfugiés ne sont pas de simples bénéficiaires passifs, mais des acteurs cruciaux dans la réponse humanitaire et le développement. Ils méritent une connaissance pour leur capacité à contribuer de manière significative à leur communauté. Cet exemple illustre l'autonomisation des réfugiés et la confiance placée à eux pour façonner leur destin. Toutes ces réalisations ne peuvent pas se concrétiser sans financement et confiance à la capacité de ces organisations dirigées par les réfugiés. Nous appelons à l'attention générale sur la nécessité de financer de manière adéquate les organisations dirigées par les réfugiés pour une prise en charge efficace et des réponses durables. Et je vous remercie.
Merci, madame. So we're going to take our final flight from Malawi to Kenya, where we're going to hear from Isaac. And if you want to introduce our heroes as well, please.
Sure. Welcome to Kenya. Good afternoon, Your Excellencies and distinguished guests. It gives me immense pleasure today to speak to you on behalf of the Mahoro Coalition. The Mahoro Coalition is an African-led organization that mobilizes the private sector to support the economic inclusion of forcibly displaced individuals. We do this through three main programs. One, we have a comprehensive corporate engagement program that empowers corporates across the African continent to intervene in displacement situations. Secondly, we also organize an event every 2 years in collaboration with the UNHCR and a partner in Komoko that brings together multi-stakeholder actors to have conversations about how we can collaborate to create better and meaningful inclusion for forcibly displaced individuals. Finally, we have a fellowship program that is designed for leaders with lived experiences of displacement across the continent. Over the last 4 years since our establishment, we've gained a few insights when it comes to localization. The first is that Africa's private sector's participation in addressing the displacement crisis in Africa is still very new. For a very long time, African companies were not quite involved in this conversation. The work we're doing changes the way the private sector actors view hosting refugees, and we hope that they will recognize the potential business opportunities these areas have to offer and engage in mutually beneficial partnerships. However, we recognize that this is a very complex process, requires patience and development of systems that can enable refugee economic inclusion. Second, we recognize that RLOs, refugee-led organizations, are extremely critical in refugee camps and settlements for our work. However, we have observed that there's a need for RLOs to enhance their capacity around how they work with private sector actors, especially to better interact with private sector actors to become vendors, partners, or peers. Furthermore, there ought to be more financing solutions for RLOs to improve their internal operations and processes to support the business community. Finally, we've also observed that to fully integrate refugees into the organizations as employees and partners, we need to go beyond pledges and make sure that private sector actors are interacting in a more win-win mechanism when it comes to engaging with such community. Looking ahead, the Mahoro Coalition is committed to creating and amplifying local solutions by mobilizing private sector actors across the continent in three main ways, and which is our pledge. One, that will consistently convene Africa's private sector organizations and other stakeholders through the Africa Forum on Displacement and other multi-stakeholder actors. This platform will continue to serve as a place for co-creation, implementation, and sharing of ideas and learnings when it comes to the displacement conversation. Further, the forum will result in increased commitments from private sector actors to support forcibly displaced individuals. And finally, it will serve as a platform for best practices, which can be used as a template for private sector engagement. Secondly, we will create a facility focused on upscaling refugee-led organizations on the continent to become more output-driven, especially when responding to private sector needs. While we acknowledge that RLOs are very capable of the work they're doing, we need to do a much better job of aligning them to the needs of private sector and not just their own particular needs. Third, through our fellowship and we'll do this actually through a technical assistance and financial support program. Finally, through our fellowship program, the coalition will support 120 forcibly displaced youth leaders on the continent by providing training, mentorship, private sector connections and mentorships, and opportunities for market access. The coalition will also disburse over $5 million to these individuals for them to grow and scale their businesses. Each fellow will have the opportunity to access more than $150,000 in funding, direct funding, which will contribute significantly to the fellow's ability to create and implement their long-term projects and initiatives. I urge all stakeholders in this room to do their part to help us accomplish the pledge that we just made. Thank you so much for your time.
Such an important partnership with the private sector. And often when we think about private sector, we think about northern private sector, and I think the value is lost that within the continent of Africa, across Asia, across the rest of Latin America, there's so much private sector activity that are really supportive and active members of our engaged community. So I thank you for continuing that. It's such an important voice to have with the table. So here's where we should have our question and answers, but I'm afraid we're going to skip that into the end, as I said in the very beginning, and we're going to move ahead with some of the announcements of the pledges that we have. We have a group from the floor, and so I will try to call each one at a time, and I'll ask you to come to the lectern here, and then as you are walking away, I'll call the next, so we can keep a flow, I hope. And I'm sorry if it seems a bit like what's the word where the anyway, you know what I mean. We'll help to keep it going. A rotating door, that's what I was looking for. So we started off by saying about all the work that's gone into this. There are 47 contributors to the process of this developing this multi-stakeholder pledge, some of which we've heard from 7 of you today already, and then we heard from 3 of our larger partners in our this morning as well, or this afternoon as well, sorry. So what I want to do is I'll start off with those that have already raised their hand earlier this week. So I'm going to turn to His Excellency the Ambassador Pearson from Denmark.
Thanks a lot. I'll be very brief. And you know, in the UN it means I will speak for half an hour. But there will be an exception here. Denmark has been very engaged in formulating, working on this pledge, and we will remain so, following up on this fantastic 3 days that we have had at the forum. I think it's really nice to hear all the good examples, and I really appreciate the colleagues from the field, so to speak, who are here to come up with the good examples. I also think it's important that we remind ourselves that we can go around here and say localization and feel very good, but let's make sure there's a follow-up. Let's make sure that when we meet again, hopefully 4 years and maybe also before, that something has happened. So we will remain very focused. And I think an important element, in addition to the efficiency, the ownership, and so on that you get from having trusting and working with the local organizations and the local people, refugees. This builds also on the popular support, so to speak, for providing the aid in my home country, for instance, because it resonates a lot with people. They can see this goes directly to people. We are doing something. So that's a very important element in the partnership, in the two-way thing that we are having here. In Denmark, we are walking the talk as we can, and that we have high ambitions. I want to mention our strategic partnership with the Danish civil society partners. As an example, across these partnerships, we have set specific requirements to ensure flexible funding and capacity sharing and transfer of decision-making power to local partners. In concrete terms, these requirements include specific annual reporting requirements on local leadership, flexible multi-year and nexus supportive funding, also for local partners. Access to include overheads for local partners, which actually may seem a small thing, but it's been very central. 20% cap on expenses in Denmark for our civil society partners, and of course also some accountability measures such as in-country dialogues with local partners. We are working with our international partners, in particular UN partners, UNHCR of course, a very central partner, and we will also work there to transfer the commitments, some of the elements mentioned here. And I just want to finish up because this morning I was part of another localization discussion, and one of the proposals made there, let's look at, for instance, contra-based pooled funds and look at, are we doing well enough on these funds? Are we setting up the right requirements? Are we actually trying to achieve the goals there as well? So let's work on that as one of the more concrete follow-ups on these things. Thanks a lot. Thank you to everybody for the effort.
Thank you very much. We're going to hear from Australia. I have two representatives next from Australia. It's a tag team.
Thank you very much. We're very pleased as Australia to get behind this multi-stakeholder pledge. We're committed to supporting more locally led humanitarian action where we can, both on principle and because it improves humanitarian response. It makes it more effective, more efficient and sustainable. And I think the examples from the panel today demonstrate really the power of investing. Our new international development policy commits Australia to supporting local leadership and solutions, including through funding local actors and by increasing the contribution and leadership of local actors across all our programs. Long-term partnerships with local actors will continue to be a key feature of Australia's approach, recognising their deep understanding of their communities, their needs and their capabilities. And we'll continue to champion localisation in our international humanitarian partnerships and our advocacy. Our pledge today is to strengthen, respect and recognise the leadership and decision-making of national and local actors in humanitarian action, along with refugee-led organisations to better address the needs of affected populations, and to support innovative localisation practices, including measuring localised humanitarian action in displacement settings. Australia sees strong links between localisation and the meaningful refugee participation agenda. Both must be centred around improving what we do by connecting better to the people most affected by the action that we take. Daniel.
Thank you. So look, I am Australia's very first refugee advisor to be here at the GRF. And I come from the former Yugoslavia. I've been a refugee 3 times before I came to Australia on a woman at risk visa. I think to live through the refugee experience and to witness others living through it are 2 very different things. The best way to know what refugees need is to include us in the deliberations that determine our lives. As refugees, we often have ideas to profit that state actors and policymakers have not considered. So for example, Labour Mobility Scheme was an initiative led by refugees. I'm proud of the fact that Australia is turning the tide and setting the world towards introducing a new norm. This year, Australia formed a diverse refugee advisory panel made up of 9 former refugees from diverse backgrounds, experiences and expertise. We serve as the link between the government and our refugee communities in Australia. And as I said, I am the first ever refugee advisor as part of the Australian National Delegation to the GRF. I was given the opportunity to meaningfully contribute to Australia's national statement and inform Australia's pledges in areas concerning refugees inside and outside of Australia. I've had multiple opportunities to do interventions and to step inside the minister's shoes. And I was sort of thinking whether I should mention this, but I will. As long as homosexuality is a crime in 63 countries and punishable by death in 11, I am the first ever openly LGBTIQ refugee to speak in my country's national statement and to contribute to it and to be here. So I think that matters. It's the first one, not just for Australia, but the entire world. And look, just follow Australia's example because it is gold standard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to turn to Ambassador from the Federal Republic of Germany for our next speaker.
To turn up. So thanks a lot. Try to be brief and let's see whether I can make the 2 minutes. That's what we learn here in Geneva. So please, a big thank you to local actors. And we think that they are really crucial when it comes to make meaningful humanitarian responses happen. And Germany, my own country, we would like to add our voice of support to the multi-stakeholder pledge on localization. And I would like to highlight 2 aspects. First, localization in humanitarian assistance is a priority for Germany. And we strive to fulfill our commitment under the Grand Bargain of providing 25% of humanitarian assistance as local as possible. And with the increasing gap between humanitarian needs and resources, increasing efficiency is a must. So localization is a crucial element to that goal, and because local actors know the situation and they have access to communities and speak the language. Second, we have to ensure that local NGOs are a central and meaningful part of humanitarian efforts in situations of forced displacement. So thank you very much for this pledge. Huge support from my own country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're moving swiftly because we have 10 more to go through before I open up to the floor. So I'm going to turn now to the representative from Switzerland, our dear friends. And our hosts, of course.
Okay. Thanks. So the fact that so many stakeholders have signed the pledges on localization and participation shows that we want to be serious about locally led, accountable, and equal partnerships. But I was wondering a little bit, why do we speak about this important topic at the end of the GRF and not at the beginning of the GRF? And I hope next time we will be first. Switzerland has flexible funding modalities which allow us to directly work with local partners and to include capacity strengthening in all what we do in all our programs. We also provide local actors with core funding, for example, in Myanmar, and this, in my view, is particularly crucial in protracted crisis context and in displacement situations. We are a signatory of the multi-stakeholder pledge, and we pledge to do even more in the support of refugee-led organizations and in specifically with regard to women-led refugee organizations. And finally, I would like to say something about participation. Nothing about us, nothing about us without us, exactly. We heard this motto and we decided to fund 86 refugee leaders to participate in the GRF. We wanted to make sure that they can contribute in a meaningful way with their experience to policies that concern them. And I met many of these refugees, of these refugee leaders at the GRF, and what a difference they made. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please don't forget, you can use the pigeonhole to continue making your own pledges from the floor. As I turn to my home country, the representative from Canada, please.
Thank you, merci. Excellencies, distinguished delegates. The central importance of including local voices, refugee voices, expertise, and engagement within humanitarian efforts cannot be overstated. Localization optimizes the reach, effectiveness, and efficiency of humanitarian assistance. It builds capacities and structures to respond to the intersectional needs of women, girls, and LGBTQI+ persons. and it systematically ensures their participation and leadership in humanitarian processes. As a means to unlock the gender transformative potential of localization, Canada is a top 10 donor to the country-based pool of funds. Canada has also contributed $10.5 million to establish a first-of-its-kind pooled fund for a localized humanitarian development nexus response as part of our Rohingya refugee response. We are committed to increasing the proportion of our humanitarian funding to local organizations, including women-led organizations. Implementing localized responses and local needs-based resource prioritization is an essential part of the solution to the growing resource gap between humanitarian funding and needs. This is why Canada is proud to have signed on to the cross-cutting policy commitment as part of this pledge. Collectively, we must advance locally led action in displacement and statelessness responses, including through fulfilling our Grand Bargain commitments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could we move to our UN Women, Peace and Humanitarian Fund representative?
The United Nations Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund is a localization instrument supporting over 1,000 local women's rights organizations in crisis and conflict settings. First, in partnership with the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, the WPHF pledges to further invest in the participation and leadership of displaced women and girls through the WPHF funding initiative on forced displacement. The initiative currently supports 181 local civil society projects with displaced women and girls in 10 countries. New investments will extend the geographical scope and reach of the initiative. Second, the WPHF, in partnership with BMZ, further pledges to strengthen and expand mutual learning for organizations led by or working with women and girls in forced displacement, through the WPHF mentorship scheme, together with the mentors of the Action Network on Forced Displacement. Third, in partnership with the German Federal Foreign Office, WPHF pledges to accelerate the meaningful participation and leadership of women in climate security and climate justice in conflict, crisis, and displacement settings, with an initial investment of €3 million. Investment will support women's organizations that focus on preventing and responding to climate-related conflicts and injustice, including organizations led by and working with refugees in conflicts and crisis settings.
Thank you very much. We're now going to turn to a representative from the grassroots-led organization Consortium in Nigeria.
Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, all. In refugee communities, refugee-led organizations face challenges, especially during their humanitarian responses to challenges or to crisis. And these challenges ranges from prevention of movement, no free movement, insecurity, lack of funds, and inadequate knowledge in humanitarian responses. On this, we pledge as a network of refugee-led organizations and local actors who identify challenges of refugees at grassroots level and propose possible solutions within our reach. We are pledging to advocate for effective implementation of localization in displacement and statelessness response, and to strengthen capacity on monitoring and evaluation. We also pledge to advocate for inclusion of refugee-led organizations in decision-making at the local and international level. So this is to help us inform the stakeholders on what we go through on our plight and to provide possible lasting solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our representative from Hayas.
HIAS is proud of the strong partnerships we have developed with local actors throughout our 120-year history as a refugee agency. Today, we acknowledge that despite this legacy of partnerships, we must do more to realize the commitments of the Grand Bargain and help shift the paradigm towards more equitable, inclusive partnerships and more effective humanitarian responses. 2 years ago, HIAS embarked on a transformational journey aimed at examining its own policies and practices to enable it to better support locally led responses. Building on this initiative, HIAS is pleased to announce the following 4 commitments. First, HIAS will advocate for the inclusion of local and refugee-led organizations in response coordination mechanisms and leadership platforms. Second, HIAS will contribute to the body of knowledge on localization, policy and practice through its localization pilot projects. Third, HIAS will increase capacity sharing with its local partners in all 22 of its operations. Finally, HIAS will pilot a flexible funding model and include a commitment in its 5-year strategy to incrementally channel funds to local refugee-led organizations. We look forward to working with other pledge members to learn more about how we can better support local actors and foster sustainable, contextually relevant solutions to improve the lives of displaced and stateless people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melanie. And now we're going to go to Adra, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Adventist Development and Relief Agency, or commonly known as ADRA, will support efforts by the Royal Thai government towards their commitment towards promoting international and regional cooperation in addressing statelessness. ADRA will support local initiatives by working with civil societies to raise awareness on the roles, duties, and processes regarding the birth and civil registration of stateless persons. Furthermore, ADRA will join the Statelessness and Dignified Citizenship Coalition, Asia Pacific, a regional alliance to end statelessness. As part of this, ADRA will support stateless persons and refugee-led organizations in programming and capacity sharing through collaboration with governments, UN agencies, civil societies, and ADRA's constituent institutions as a faith-based organization. Thank you.
Could I have Jasmine, who's representing the PIL Net, please?
Hello, and I wanted to start by saying to Netherlands, as far as this pledge goes, the legal community is in. So yesterday, some of you may have been there, and in the plenary, PILNet announced a multi-stakeholder pledge made by the legal community. The legal community collectively has come together to pledge to provide legal assistance to over 1 million displaced persons in the next 4 years, and to provide close to 1 million pro bono hours for refugee-led organizations and the organizations that are led by or work with them. And that is why I'm here today. So in addition to coordinating the pledge, which PILNet does, we have also made our own commitments to other multi-stakeholder pledges which have a legal dimension. And this, so far, it has not been mentioned, but indeed I think this pledge does have such a legal dimension. Many RLOs face significant legal barriers to being empowered and to being able to be self-sufficient. And so we pledge today to work with our legal community to empower civil society organizations towards full self-sufficiency and where it is desired, full NGO status. This includes supporting these organizations to be matched with free legal assistance, including with legal registration, compliance, advocacy, access to banking, and to strengthen their economic inclusion and legal resilience. Specifically, in the next 4 years, we pledge to broker free legal assistance for at least 160 civil society organizations working with and for refugees, including at least 80 refugee-led organizations. We look forward to working with you all, and thank you very much.
Thank you. swiftly on to the representative from DRC, which is the Danish Refugee Council, not the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Important distinction, thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to announce our pledge here today, and thank you to the panelists. Operationalizing localization is not an easy task for anyone. It requires substantial changes to the ways organizations have been working for decades, including DRC. Yet it is a change that we all must prioritize and progress on for the sake of ensuring the most appropriate, timely, and sustainable responses to people affected by conflict and displacement, because they are the best place to identify solutions to their own challenges. In DRC, Danish Refugee Council, localization has become a core strategic priority, and we have recently endorsed the localization vision. By 2030, DRC's main modality of implementation is one where DRC systematically supports, facilitates, and strengthens local actors and systems. A key step towards more locally led aid and development is a systematic change to how financial resources are shared in partnerships between international and local actors. In recognition of this, DRC pledges to roll out a policy that ensures the provision of indirect cost recovery to its local partners as part of standard partnership practices, which will come into effect in 2024. DRC also pledges to continue advocating for sector-wide changes to the funding modalities to help operationalize global commitments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And from Tanzania, we have a representative from the International Development Research Center, please.
Good afternoon. I'm representing the 12 IDRC-funded research chairs located in the Global South. The research chairs are a good example of a really localized research, and we thank IDRC for that. If I can talk about localization, partnerships and collaboration are key. We need to move beyond the separation of actors as states, UN, NGOs, refugees, and academic, but acting together and delivering together. In doing so, there is a need to have equal power in terms of resources and understanding. Some organizations have more resources, others have less. Some organizations have technical know-how with no resources or limited resources, and some are lacking the knowledge of the local or the traditional areas. Many hosting states have been left with not much resources compared to some of the international organizations. There are also differences in resources and power between international non-government organizations and local non-government organizations. Most local NGOs have failed to operate due to the conditions of matching funds. There should be another condition. For the international non-government organizations to work with local non-government organizations, and in doing so, they build capacity. The partnership requires transparency in resources and working towards a common goal. An earmarked fund from some of the donors are best to be used for fostering partnership. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our last intervention before we turn to the closing bit, we will have to take our questions, and I promise you we will get those recorded and shared. Our last, it will be from ODI, the Overseas Development Institute. Representative, please. Thank you. And then we'll turn to the closing directly.
Hello, everyone. Probably we're saving the best for the last. My name is Andira Yusuf Kara, and I'm a refugee researcher, probably also a new title today. I'm originally from Sudan, and I live in Kenya. And we've recently published a publication by ODI and Development Initiative that investigates the funding to refugee-led organizations. It highlights the critical importance of refugee-led organizations being better incorporated into localization policy agenda, from which they've often been excluded and not explicitly mentioned in the localization instruments. Our research confirmed that what we've known anecdotally for over years, that refugee-led organizations are chronically underfunded. And just 26 million reached RLOs in 2022. And the size of grants made to refugee-led organizations were 10 times smaller to local and national organizations. This is just a drop in an ocean when compared to funding to wider refugee response. If donors today, international organization present and government are serious about localization and or localizing refugee responses and funding, then refugee-led organizations need to be front and center of this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to say thank you to my 7 panelists, plus our speakers that kicked us off in the keynote. It's been I hope it's not as interactive as maybe we had hoped for, but this is where we are. And I think that that is also important. But also to note that we've had 14 announced pledges from the floor. So I want to send my thanks to that. So thank you very much, panelists. We have 2 closing speakers. No surprise, you're not getting out yet. One is my dear, well, both of them are dear friends. I shouldn't say that, but from the Lotus Flower, which is a Kurdish-based NGO, we have Taban, who is going to give us the formal closing, and then we're going to invite Kelly Clemens back to give us the UNHCR final word. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, UNHCR and ICFA, for organising this, and thank you for all the pledges. I can't stress enough how desperately it's needed. So I used to have a reoccurring nightmare where I would scream, but no sound would come out. And the intense fear of not being seen or heard was so real that it would wake me with a pain in my throat. That feeling of not being seen or heard is a little glimpse of what it feels like to be displaced, stateless, a refugee, or a local actor. I'm a Kurdish genocide survivor. I arrived in the UK at the age of 6, having experienced persecution from Saddam Hussein. At the age of 4, I was in prison. I escaped being buried alive and witnessed atrocities that no child should see. I was that quiet child in the classroom, too scared to speak. As I grew older, I found my way. I found the right tools. I found the right support to help me become the change maker that I am today. With that, I founded the Lotus Flower, a women refugee-led organization supporting women and girls impacted by conflict and displacement. Like that quiet child, a local organization, we had no support. We started with nothing in my living room, no money, no staff, no visibility, no connections. But we had an abundance of experience, knowledge, and reach into the communities where we wanted to make a difference. Over time, the right support, we grew from nothing to where we are now. 200 local staff implementing impactful projects, leading critical partnerships like the UNHCR Child Protection Programme, and supporting more than 60,000 people in the community. I can give you 2 examples of partnerships that really helped us on that journey, which shows advancing localization in action from organizations in this room. The Lotus Flower won the NGO Consultation Award in 2022. This gave us a small unrestricted grant where we could use where we needed it urgently. It gave us visibility to build connections, which led doors to open to grow our income from $400,000 to now $2.5 million. It allowed me to be included in networks like the Action Network on Forced Displacement, supported by Germany and BMZ. In addition, it flourished in larger program partnerships, and not forgetting, giving us access and active participation to forums like this and to be part of and making pledges. In the same year, I was part of ICVA's Women's Leadership Training Program. This helped me enhance my skills as a leader, but also built really meaningful connections. In short, we need to recognize that people with lived experience are some of the world's greatest change makers, so become collaborators with them. Meaningful participation is opening doors, giving us a seat at the table, allowing us to be seen and heard, and allowing us to shine as leaders to help create more future leaders. It's about building equal partnerships to help each other to solve the world's most urgent problems, to learn from each other, to complement each other, and recognize the importance we both play. Together we can ensure the right change is made by, in, and for the community. Thank you.
I just had to come back. Thank you, Jamie. I am not going to say anything because Taban just said it all. We started actually on Tuesday with a room, I am saying something, with almost 300 refugees, refugee-led organizations, women-led organizations, local organizations. The energy in that room has permeated this entire town. And what I wanted to say is to echo something I just said with all of these wonderful pledges that have been made from organizations, donors, and partners, which is, it's not what happens here these 3 days. What really matters is what happens tomorrow. So please, let us keep this momentum going. Let us make sure that those voices that Taban just described echo in our own country context, in our own circles. Expand your partnerships, make this real. And for those of you that haven't pledged yet, we expect you to. Thanks very much.
That was really the closing. Don't look to, I want to say thank you again for being with us. Thanks.